Welcome back. This is it. Are you ready? I sure am. Let's get it done. Most of my conventional inventory management is out the window. I won't be crafting, smelting, or sleeping in this dimension. I can't escape the dimension using a magic mirror since only scrolls work for some reason, and I'm not even gonna bother mapping it because the trail of destruction that I leave in my wake will be more than enough to identify which buildings I've looted already. To fill all this free space, I've taken the conservative approach of carting around 27 stacks of diamond-tipped arrows. In addition to this, there is a bug, or possibly a feature, I'm not sure which, where infinity bows will not consume arrows placed in quivers, so I also have infinite regular arrows on top of that if I need to clear out trash mobs. I'm also going to be taking my looting spear, which is a decent weapon in its own right. Parasites do this Borg thing where they evolve immunities to weapons you hit them with if you don't kill them fast enough, so having a decent fallback weapon might make the difference, and it's not like I don't have inventory space to spare. Oh, speaking of that, we can't forget the row and a half of buffing items. Buff ordering is pretty straightforward for this build. All I need to do is, in any order, eat ambrosia, drink my flight potion, and then drink 3 defensive potions followed by 2 bottles of adult beverage, wild berry flavor. I'm carrying enough of all of those to engage for about 25 minutes, but the real limiting factor is going to be my armor durability. Damage taken by your armor increases with the strength of the attack that it blocks. This is actually a vanilla mechanic that normally never shows up, but it does come to play in a big way in the Lost Cities, because I'm mitigating so much damage right now that my armor is going to do its level best to melt off my body unless I feed it a constant supply of experience. That's enough talking for now. Let's go shoot the breeze and stab some eldritch horrors. Welcome to the Lost Cities. It may look calm, but I assure you that's going to change. If I were particularly inclined, I would then explain how buildings in this game are dynamically generated from a pre-made set of templates and how this makes chest locations predictable, but the fact is, it doesn't matter, because I have Skyrat X-ray hacks and a tool that can instantly mine every block in the game. Walls are a suggestion at this point. But first, let's see how well my damage mitigation works against the average chthonic monstrosity. Pretty dang well, it turns out. In retrospect, the last time I did a full Lost Cities run, I had a much more DPS-focused build, so it's possible that I was misremembering how bad these were. What I was not misremembering, though, is how much damage they do to my armor. Good grief. Also, it's raining, which means fire isn't going to be super effective. Parasites don't like fire, and I really like fire, so this is a problem, but my base damage should be good enough inside buildings, so let's get going. My first question, by the way, there were a lot of questions and I'm not going to get to even a fraction of them, so sorry in advance, was from Kilvanix, who asks what I do to avoid burnout. I hyperfixate on whatever I'm working on, and that probably isn't the response that you're looking for, but it's the truth. Angelic Ruby asks, why didn't I get a flying mob for the end? Most flying mounts are either super squishy or super fat. Squish is bad because if the mobs die, then I get dropped into the void feet first, and fat mobs are bad because it makes them impossible to maneuver in tight areas, so I just felt safer with flight potions. Blue-maned Hawk asks a lot of things, so I will let y'all read that directly if you want to, but in order, because I didn't know it existed. Solved game implies that there is an optimal strategy for doing something that always works, so no, but it does seem like a mostly solved problem, even if RNG plays a very large part in the early game. It turns out, being a massive coward is just pretty effective in general. No, because the manual would have one line in it that just reads, "Don't do anything that can get you killed," which is not terribly insightful, and then documenting the thousands upon thousands of ways that you can die in RLCraft would make for very boring reading. I chose technical efficiency because fun gameplay would have gotten me killed, and that breaks the one rule of don't do anything that can get you killed, though I kind of touch on this a little bit more in my retrospective at the end of the video. How much did hardcore matter? A lot. Knowing the world would be deleted if I messed up played a huge role in how I selected for engagements and what I did just as a general strategy. Most of the rest of the questions are going to be touched on at some point down the line, though for documentation, I don't really think I needed a whole lot for RLCraft, and what I did need was just readily out there. As for New Horizons, documentation doesn't exist for a lot of what I do because nobody knows how it works at all, or even that you can do it. And those that do don't usually want to take the time to write it down. New Horizons actually has a lot of stuff already documented for things that are important to a normal run. It's just that I'm doing so many weird things that no one's written anything down about them. Inquisitor Holy points out that I could have just bone mealed berry bushes in the previous episode. I had no idea this worked, and defaulted to the assumption that bone meal is useless, but that's good to know. Necrovia asks if I could remove a mod, which would I pick? Honestly, the one that puts all the cosmetic overlay garbage that I turned off in video 1 into the game. I never play with any of it enabled, and I feel like it does nothing but detract from combat by cluttering your screen with garbage, so I don't think anyone would miss it. If I could touch one up, Lycanite mobs obviously needs some work. Most of the mod is actually really good and is fairly well balanced, but the potion effects need to chill out, and they're kind of overtuned given how this pack works in a way that makes it needlessly annoying to fight just about anything. Looking at you, Chaos mobs. Gav Lee asks how I would imagine a meaningfully challenging automation pack. I don't need to, because I have GregTech New Horizons, and I don't feel like reinventing the wheel. Hubert, or possibly Hubert, asks how I come up with my jokes. I write down what I want to say, and simply choose not to hold back all of the snarky and potentially inappropriate one-liners that come to mind. It's not that I'm doing anything abnormal when I'm writing the script, it's just that I normally censor myself a lot when I talk to people in real life. Are Lost Cities enemies really that powerful? Yes. I could potentially roll up in weaker gear, but the chance of death in the Lost Cities is kind of an inverse log of your level of tankiness, and I want that number approaching 0, because if I die, I have to start all over again, and it's not worth not putting in the effort early. How's It To Ya says I was perhaps looking for a different phrase when I chose hit and run. Yes, I was, in the same way that I was looking for a different phrase when I chose to refer to adult beverages as adult beverages. My faith in YouTube's automated content moderation is functionally non-existent, for very good reasons. Kabuki asks how much time I put into these videos. As of right now, my most recent RLCraft world has 67 hours on it. I didn't need to do a lot of testing, but some of the other failed worlds were pretty long-lived, so I'd say round that up to 100, so maybe 14 to 15 hours of playtime per video, plus another 3 for voicing and editing. It's a lot, and once I go back to work, I'm probably going to be limited to just doing New Horizons stuff, unless I want to switch out what series I upload a video for, but it's not unmanageable. Fishboy, with all of the jump buffs, how high can I go? Probably around 6 or 7 blocks. I never really checked, and I mostly don't bother jumping because I can fly now, but it is a pretty substantial buff. Robert Furr asks, how do I come up with my creative descriptions of things, somewhat in line with Hubert? I call them the first thing that comes to mind and neglect to censor myself in the same way that I do when I'm talking to normal people. This is just how my brain works, folks. Fire of Shadow asks if I've considered creating a mod pack myself. Considered, yes. Ever actually tried or put any work into it? No. Nowadays, all the really well-designed mod packs usually need custom scripting or tweak their versions of the mods to keep everything from breaking, and I'm not familiar enough with Minecraft's modding tools or Java in general to really want to tackle that project. Fresh Tales now asks, how do I go about researching things, given that so many of them have so little documentation, and they comment that it seems daunting. It certainly can be. Usually my first line of defense for information gathering is to just Google it and see if anything relevant shows up. There's a lot out there for popular mods, but a lot of times me researching something is me already knowing a mechanic and needing to look up specific details, and those tend to be hit or miss. If I really need a super technical explanation, I generally find that the easiest way of getting that is to just read through the source code for that version of the mod. With a few exceptions, looking at you, RLCraft, just about every mod is open source and has a GitHub repository with the code written in plain text, and it literally tells you exactly how everything works. If that fails, I just kind of try a lot of things and figure it out for myself. I spend a whole lot of time in test worlds, or just copy the main one and use that. And most of the mechanics and mods are intended to be easy enough for children to understand, so usually it isn't too much work to reverse engineer them. But every once in a while, I just do encounter things that I have no idea how they work and have to go on without them. Redirecting the focus back to gameplay a bit, my first run in Lost Cities was pretty smooth. I obviously didn't get a dragon ring yet, but I did secure several others for what little good that does me. And I have seen quite a few empty chests, which is a solid clue that dragon rings are being rolled for, but I just didn't get lucky. And that ties into a bunch of math about how the rings are generated that I'm not going to get into, so don't worry about it. After resupplying my buffs and letting my inebriation tick down, I then just buff up and head straight back into the mess again, because it's not like I have anything else to do at this point. And back to the questions. Zanyas asks how one learns RLCraft and points out that the modpack has way too many ways of doing the exact same thing. I can't speak for everyone, but I learned by dying. A lot. RLCraft has a pretty straightforward progression path once you learn good life management habits, so technically speaking, it's pretty simple to understand. Other than that, usually if I find something from a mod I'm unfamiliar with, I will just go through and read up on everything in the mod. So, to answer the question more succinctly, death and documentation. X1400 asks if there's any plans on making a community Discord. No. I have a post in the community tab for the channel that explains why in more detail, but the short answer is no. Extant Melody asks if I have any plans to do Blightfall. I do actually have plans for Blightfall. It's been a hot minute since I've played it, so I might have to do some routing to make sure the challenge run I have in mind is actually possible, but it is something that I want to do when I have some more free time, which at this point is looking like maybe sometime next year. 10 Points to Win asks where I would recommend starting with modded Minecraft. That is tricky, because I don't know any modern mod packs, but if I had to generalize, I'd say some of the all the mods packs are probably a decent shot if you want something built for a newer version. If you're down for retro Minecraft, though, Technic Classic, Big Dig, and the 1.7.10 pack are all excellent options, though if memory serves, the 1.7.10 pack was pretty chuggy when I tried to run it, so if you don't have a good computer, I'd stay away from that one. The real thing you want to avoid is any sort of challenge run pack or something that forces you to use modded content right out of the gate, because the learning curve will be terrible. Avoid Skyblock style packs, avoid Greg Tech unless it's completely optional. Look for stuff that describes itself as a kitchen sink or vanilla-like pack, and then once you learn one, others will be easier, but either way, be prepared to do a lot of Googling no matter what you go with. Halo Rocks asks if I can do a Big Dig special focusing on some of my more broken shenanigans. I'm really tempted, but if I were to do that, I would want it to be a series, so that you can see the natural evolution of the shenanigans. Overpowered nonsense is great, but it has to be seen in context of the intended progression arc for the game to have any impact. I can't just be like, wow, I have infinite everything, and then expect people to go, ooh, wow, that's so cool, when they would just say, okay, you turned on creative mode and spawned stuff in. That's not particularly impressive. What's up, Doc? And many other people ask why I didn't just spam grape-flavored adult beverage to extend my potion effects indefinitely. This is actually an interesting question. The answer is because for some reason I was operating under the assumption that high levels of inebriation would result in me losing my potion effects. I suspect that where this idea came from is that if you have more than 12 positive potion effects, you're affected with something called potion sickness, which has a chance of eliminating all of your buffs, but that is absolutely not how that mechanic works. I am entirely immune to all of the downsides of inebriation because I have an Ankh Charm, so just spamming grape beverage literally has zero downsides aside from pickling my liver. I have no idea why I got those two mechanics conflated, and I have no excuse other than not having any idea what I'm doing at the time. Thorn Rose asks what my opinion on good difficulty is in a mod pack and what makes the difference between a painful grind or a fun and interesting one. For difficulty, I'm of the opinion that complex problems should demand equally complex solutions, and powerful tools should demand equally powerful attempts to get them. By that measure, most modern mods and mod packs are way too simple for me and way too forgiving of lazy design in general, but you also have to remember that most of this stuff is intended for older children and teenagers, so my standards are a little bit unrealistic. As for the difference between grinds, the long and short of it is that tedium is not the same as grinding, and gamers that conflate the two design bad games. Grinding, in my mind, involves a lot of work to reach an end goal. This is also referred to as hard work, and can be quite fun and rewarding, and is something that people do because they enjoy it. Tedium is the result of doing the same thing over and over and over again, and this is what kills games, because tedium is boring, and nobody plays video games to be bored. Case in point, my RLCraft run is one massive grind to kill an Amalgalich. It was generally not tedious, because in order to grind for that goal, I had to do a whole bunch of different things that were individually usually pretty interesting or fun in their own way. This is a good kind of grind. If, instead of that buffet of progression options, the only way RLCraft gave me to get stronger was to farm mobs and kill guardians like every other MMORPG ever designed, looking at you, Warcraft, that would be tedious and boring, and would have made for a very bad grind, and I probably wouldn't have done the challenge run. Detached Hat points out that I don't use a grappling hook and wants to know if it's any good. Probably a little bit, but I don't trust it. I know that there's a couple of specific cheeses that you can execute using one, but the real intention of the grappling hook is vertical mobility, and when I think vertical mobility in RLCraft, that thought kind of just auto-completes to me falling to my death, so I decided to just use the stairs. Draconis Leonidas asks what exactly I meant when I said that I could have cheesed the final boss super quickly without a rule in place requiring me to get a dragon ring, and asks if I can explain how that works. The real reason for requiring a dragon ring had nothing to do with killing the final boss. It was to force me to engage with Lost Cities content, because I thought at the time it would be kind of lame if after all the build-up in the past 6 episodes or whatever, I went 3 minutes into the Lost Cities, lasered down the Amalgalich, and dipped before seeing a single parasite mob, and I wanted a challenge, not a speed run. Zeros, have I considered playing all the mod packs? ATM is short for all the mods, by the way, for people who aren't familiar. I tinkered with a couple, but I am so deeply entrenched in technical Minecraft that uncomplicated kitchen sink mod packs are kind of too easy at this point. Maybe once the Nothing run is completed, because I have been wanting to do shorter series. Blazing Beazle asks a couple questions. Why don't I bother with Lycanite summons or mounts in the early game, and can I give hints as to what my next series will be? I've yet to find any effective use of Lycanite summons, so I never use them. Their damage output is low, they are not tanky in the least, their AI and pathing is terrible, and every time I summon them, they inevitably block lines of sight that I need to accurately gauge threats and stand around and do nothing. I would literally rather summon dirt blocks, because dirt blocks block projectiles better. The mounts are better, but again, not that good. All of them kind of are a mix of being too slow, too rare, too squishy, or too expensive and dangerous to tame, and none of that changes until long after I stop needing them. The only time I considered using them was when I needed to AFK and search for biomes, but by that point I had dragon eggs, and dragons will do that job just as well, so there was never any use. As for series, I am almost certain Rimworld will be up next. I have no timeline or estimation for that, though, because my extra free time is going to be coming to an end here pretty quick, and New Horizons videos have started to demand way more work to put out videos just because the progression is getting more technical and complicated and doesn't really include anything that's footage worthy. So we will see how that plays out. Random Player asks what I think of making a Dawncraft series once RLCraft is over. This question echoes a very common trend of, hey, can you do X, that a lot of people ask, so I'm just going to answer more generally for anyone who asks or requests anything. I do see and read and research your recommendations. I am not ignoring them. The problem is that I have a whole mountain of recommendations, and I do not have any more time in the day to work on stuff. So I kind of have to prioritize. And this will mean that a lot of really good stuff is just not going to be in the cards for a while, if ever, because even if I didn't eat, sleep, or go to work and just did YouTube video work 24/7, I would not come close to scratching the surface here. Alfredeus. I recognize that name. How many worlds did I restart? Ignoring all the ones I did before I started doing this series, and ignoring all the playtest runs that were never recorded, 10. The one you are watching right now is the 11th attempt. If you include every one that I ever did with this kind of challenge in mind, easily over 200, probably closer to about 250. Cargoner asks, do I plan on sticking to challenge runs, or will I do any packs in a more vanilla gameplay style? By which I assume you mean, will I play through them like a normal person? It depends. Challenge runs are fun because they provide a nice motivation for unusual problem solving, and I feel like I am at my very strongest when I am solving unusual problems. But challenges aren't a requirement for that sort of behavior, so more vanilla-style playthroughs might be in the future, depending on what I'm feeling like. I have been bouncing around the idea of a no-holds-barred, automate everything, seek technological ascendancy kind of run where I see how far I can push a pack past its natural endgame state, but I would want to be real careful about how I implement the rules and goals for that, because I could very easily see that turning into another nothing-style mega saga that takes 60 episodes, and I would prefer not to be locked down to another long-term series. QE4504 asks, Foxglove? Yes, Digitalis is the Latin name for a genus of very pretty and very toxic flowering plants that are referred to with the common name of foxglove. Beak3963 asked why I avoided getting Lycanite weapons and tools during the early game, and if I've ever played Magic the Gathering. So quite a few people wanted to know about the Lycanite tools thing. I just don't use them. For the most part, my early game involves quite a lot of inventory management, so usually I don't have slots to spare with carrying random body parts from dead mobs, and by the late game, I don't find them to be super relevant unless I'm doing large-scale construction projects, which I never really did. So most of their strong uses just aren't super relevant. As to if I've ever played Magic the Gathering, no, I never really got into the card game scene. Jackie Liu asks, what version of RLCraft am I playing? 2.9.3. Why did I choose this version? Because it was the most up-to-date version in the Technic Launcher, and I had no other reason to go with a different one. What advice would I give someone who has just started playing RLCraft? Enable keep inventory, disable all of the stupid visual overlay junk, or just straight up uninstall the mod, and prepare to die in excessively unfair ways until you learn what you can and cannot do. RLCraft kind of just throws you in the deep end, and there's sea serpents in the pool, so expect failure. Captain Zymon asks, how do I find the energy to deal with RLCraft? I mean, it isn't much of an ask. I do legitimately enjoy the pack, and since I know how to avoid most of the worst mechanics and don't take it personally when RNG decides it's my time to go, it's not too bad. That's really all there is to it. It's a matter of personal perception. Brandon Gawel asks, did I enjoy the run? Yeah, actually I did. It's hard to convey the relative scale of what I do when editing because all the important progression stuff has to be summarized, but most of my time past episode 3 was just spent running around exploring and looting and fighting mobs. Grinding does play a large part at times, but my tolerance for tedium is pretty high, and I can listen to stuff in the background when I'm not recording footage. So despite how I made it sound, it was not a terrible experience. That said, if I were to do this pack again, and I do fully intend to, I will definitely be taking a different approach, just because hardcore RLCraft is kind of not the best way of playing the pack. I have a couple of ideas regarding that, but I'm not going to spoil them, so you will just have to wait and see. Coyote asks, what are some things that I think Minecraft-like games miss about Minecraft that impact gameplay and user experience? And also, can you see the cat again? I don't have any more cat photos, sorry, but I can answer your questions. To set the record straight, voxel and grid-based game engines are a really convenient way of allowing for modular construction and world building on the programming level, and they have been around since basically forever. Games use them because it's an obvious solution to a lot of problems that come up when programming an engine, and not because they're stealing from Minecraft. That said, there are a lot of survival games who do try and crib off Minecraft style that I can talk about, so it is in no way invalid to say that games are stealing from Minecraft sometimes. On a gameplay level, Minecraft works because it offloads the creative process onto the player. There are more traditional video game elements in it, but they aren't usually super intrusive, and you're basically free to do whatever you want from day one. It also works because you are in a world with consistent systems, and the game invites you to manipulate them in whatever way that you want, rather than just prescribing you tasks and expecting you to complete them. You can't sequence break Minecraft because there is no sequence to break. You can't think outside the box in Minecraft because there is no box to think out of. The game is just a set of rules and how you choose to navigate them. Newer survival games that come out seem to utterly miss why this is so important, and instead try and force people into following these pre-designed progression paths. And the end result of this is you end up with a survival game themed cookie clicker, and that just makes for a weaker experience. It doesn't make the games bad, per se, but it does kind of tend to make them linear, and their replayability suffers a lot for it. On a technical level, I mean, it really depends, but the big one that I can think of is that most other games are just really badly optimized or have terrible user interfaces. To be fair, Minecraft itself started out pretty crunchy, actually, but once it started gaining in popularity, it was polished up a lot, and those little improvements make a huge difference during gameplay. On the other side of the coin, Icefire Blast asks, can you explain why you think phantoms were a terrible mob, and mention other design choices you think are questionable? So, Minecraft is not perfect, but the best way I can explain it is that Minecraft makes an implicit promise to the player that so long as you don't go looking for trouble, it won't come looking for you. So as long as you spawn-proof where you live, you are basically left alone by the game to do whatever the heck you want without being interrupted by random mobs trying to eat your brains. Phantoms are terrible because they break that promise. And now, all of a sudden, if you don't complete this chore of touching a bed every real-life hour or so, you're going to be constantly bombarded by these annoying, frustrating-to-fight mobs that you can't spawn-proof against in the way that you can literally everything else. To make this worse, they don't just spawn in. They spawn in a way you can't control them, are aggressive enough to require that you kill them or avoid them or respond to them in some way, and the solution to get rid of them is stupid and inconvenient. And on top of all that, they provide nothing to justify the time that it takes to deal with them. So really, they are a mechanic that, as implemented, exists only to cause annoyance and justify the existence of a bed. As for other decisions I find questionable, Netherite is dumb, not because it exists, but because getting it is pure tedium for no good reason whatsoever. Caves and cliffs makes us techie Minecrafters' lives harder for reasons that I'm not going to dive too deeply into, and I have mixed opinions regarding the new ore spawning mechanics, but I love what they did to the caves and world generation, so that's kind of 50-50. I think Deep Dark is, like, meta redefining without harming the rest of the game, so I'm fine with it, but it seems like a weird option. Archaeology reads a little bit tonally inconsistent with the rest of the game, but I don't hate it. Really, my opinions are kind of all over the place. Side note, if Mojang ever wants to get on my good side, they should make tile entities like droppers and dispensers and chests and stuff be pushable by pistons. But, you know, I can dream. Just saying, if anyone wanted to code that in, that would make for some really cool designs. Ramses Campoyo, what do I think caused my breakout success on YouTube? Randomly getting a ton of channel exposure somewhere around week 11 for no reason that I can determine whatsoever, and good enough content that I was able to retain a fair bit of the audience I got from that. I do not know. I just got lucky. Bradley Redlin, beating RLCraft from nothing. So, in its base state, that is not possible, because Lycanite boss progression requires access to the end, and I have no way of getting blocks to spawn out of nothing for the first stages of the game. But, if you removed the Dimension Blacklist on Lycanite boss arena spawning, or had a way of creating an end portal, you might be able to do it on Skyblock. In the future, I do want to try a run like that anyway, just because I think it would be fun, so I'm not going to put too much thought into that right now, but there would be some technical hurdles. Funny Muffler asks, would I try Dwarf Fortress? Yes, I would, if I had the time. That is actually one of the things that I wanted to get into at some point. MJR Soap asks, why? I needed something to do with my time, so why not? I don't really know what this is directed towards. Axel asks, does commenting actual help? Oh boy, it's time to take a deep dive into statistician Goose territory. At the risk of generalizing from sparse data, which is a serious risk because I am drawing from a whole one data point here, the Greg Tech video that solicited questions doesn't seem to have performed any better or worse than other similar content, despite having about twice as many comments. That said, twice as many of a very small number is not particularly significant. YouTube's recommendation algorithms are closed source, but if I were them, I would absolutely be collecting data and running sentiment analysis on the comment section. YouTube's win condition is more people watching more things, so I suspect that comment history has a much larger impact on what you personally are recommended than on the content that you commented on. However, my videos already have an unnaturally high level of engagement across the board, independent of how much or little they're commented on. So depending on how smart the algorithm is, and it's Google, so my assumption is really dang smart, it could very well have learned that comment rates for my specific channel are not a strong indicator of watch time or engagement, and adjusted that accordingly. So, too long, didn't listen is probably yes, but it's hard to say how much, and it's even harder to say what, if anything, that benefit is contingent on you also doing. It certainly won't hurt, and I like reading them, so by all means feel free to keep commenting if you want, but I have no data to suggest anything either way. Commander Kratom asks, have I considered doing tutorials on some of the harder mods that I play with? Not really. If there's something specific to what I do that's complicated enough to demand an explanation, I usually just try and walk through it in the video itself, and I kind of trust other sources to pick up the slack for more general tech. The problem with doing tutorials is that most people wouldn't be interested, and good tutorials take a lot of time to put together, and I can't really afford to do tutorials and a series at the same time, especially if there's so little demand for the tutorial. Sheeban Prime asks how effective a shield is in RLCraft, and would I be better off with a Totem of Undying? So, unless Totems of Undying were massively changed, and I never used them so I wouldn't know, they are not going to be terribly useful, because if I'm somehow in a situation where I can die, chances are that the Totem is not going to be of any help in getting me out of there. In either case, the point of having a shield in that offhand slot is not actually to block with it. Most of my baubles are slot-specific and don't work in the offhand, but the Ankh shield doesn't care, so it would have ended up there anyway. Since it can accept shield-based enchantments, I also went ahead and threw on all of the shield enchantments in the hope that they would help with damage mitigation. Apparently that doesn't work with natural blocking, but I didn't know that at the time. And as a proper shield, I can, in rare instances, use it as it was intended, but shields really aren't relevant in the endgame, so it's mostly there just because that's the best spot to put it. Not Sterline asks if there is different RLCraft versions out there, in context of me mentioning earlier that Golem Armor was the strongest in the base game, and they ask why I didn't do the run with other versions. This version is the air-quote official version of RLCraft. There is a compatible version of the Ice and Fire mod that introduced something called Dragonsteel, which is stronger than Dragonscale armor. And it seems like a fairly popular practice among the RLCraft community to switch the default official version out for the newer Ice and Fire one. I chose not to do that because it seemed a bit cheaty, and if I'm going to play RLCraft, I wanted to play it as the creator intended, give or take some annoying visual effects. So I mostly just chose that as a strategic and gameplay choice. Touching back in on the game, Run 4 was pretty much the same thing as Run 3. I got a couple rings, neither of them were what I was looking for. Run 5 had to be aborted early due to a glitched drowning effect that persisted despite me being well out of range of the mob applying it, so that one was kind of a bust. Drowning doesn't really hurt me, but it is annoying, and the damage flinch can interrupt scroll usage and bow usage sometimes, and all sorts of interesting things that I need to stay alive, so I went ahead and bailed out to reset the effect. And now this is footage from Run 6. We're about an hour and 20 minutes in. I've been doing this long enough that most of the local buildings have been either looted or obliterated, or both. It turns out that world-ending parasite infestations lower the property values. Who would have thought? Boss Awesome Sauce asks how they could become an XP god without all of that bothersome hard work that goes into making an XP farm or a guardian farm due to crippling laziness, and boy do I empathize with that. This is me spitballing here because I have done zero testing, so do your own checks before relying on it. But I suspect that the fastest way might be to cheese spawner limits. Supposedly spawners despawn after you kill 10 mobs that have been summoned from them, but you can trick them into thinking that the mobs naturally despawn by shoving them through a nether portal. This apparently doesn't add to their count. So how you farm from there is up to you, but I could see a situation where you light a spawner up and collect mobs from it, and then transport them to the nether to kill them. I would not recommend taking the same portal that the mobs come out of, though. That seems unwise. Irrelevant Radiation asks how I would nerf Lycanite mobs to make them less unbalanced. Honestly, for all of my complaining, 90% of the mod is entirely fine. The problem is the potion effects from the mobs completely take away any control you have over your character, and that is the part that needs to be rebalanced. So chaos needs to be less chaotic, paralysis needs to be less paralytic, fear needs to be less scary, the suction effect from certain mobs needs to suck less, that sort of thing. I don't even think you need to get rid of them entirely. I just wish that you could maintain some level of control of your mobility while under their effects. Nosnik of the unpronounceable name asks me why I'm not using Totems of Undying in general, which is separate from why I didn't use them in my shield slot. To put it simply, anything that is somehow able to kill me once would just hit me again after the totem pop to finish the job. So, given the choice, I would rather have literally anything else in my offhand, because Totems of Undying are not going to help. Neelam Parsons, another name that I recognize, asks if I have YouTubers that I take inspiration from and if I've ever considered running events, by which I assume you mean some sort of meetup. I absolutely take inspiration from other YouTubers, but not in the way that is creditable to any one person or channel. Mostly I just osmosize a bunch of little quirks that kind of integrate themselves without me really noticing it. Case in point, I occasionally use traditional British slang in my voiceovers, despite being demonstrably not British. I wouldn't say anything I do on my channel is patterned after anyone, though, so that's probably a better response. As for meetups, organized events, in which I am the sole social linchpin, holding together a group of wildly diverse strangers, who I am also responsible for maintaining the health and safety of, seems like the literal definition of my personal boggart. So, no. If for some reason I was asked to speak at a convention or something organized, ran and insured by somebody not me, and was appropriately compensated for it, yeah, sure, I don't see why not. But I would not want to do that myself, because that is like a public Discord server on steroids, with a fun additional bonus chance at lawsuits or grievous bodily harm, and I'm not interested in either of those at the moment. Gaming Channel, which is their actual name, asks if I heard of lockpicks giving different sounds if I was close to the correct tumbler. I had no idea that was a thing, but the amount of time I would save by using that to lockpick is honestly so small that I wouldn't really pay attention to it anyway. I really don't run into that many locked chests. The Pirate Man points out that I've been doing this all wrong, and the run would have been easier if I'd just opened the game to land, enabled cheats, and turned on God mode. You are entirely correct, but you are also talking to the person who wanted to play GregTech New Horizons starting with a single block of dirt in a void world, so I am confused as to why you think making things easier is something that I am interested in. Speaking of which, AddleMe asks how I planned my base in New Horizons and mentioned that they don't like to raise the spawn of spaghetti monsters or something. I didn't plan, really. I just drew pretty circles and then stuff happened. As for spaghetti monster control, the best advice I can give you is that if you put the spaghetti monster in a box, they usually aren't smart enough to escape. My chemical reactor line did, but it also had some help. And now for my final question, which is a real doozy asked by Tenebricity. What do I think of my viewers and the time they spend watching me? Do I consider this channel to be newfound fame or something else? Do I think I deserve the time people put into watching me? They also mentioned that these questions were apparently inspired by a documentary video on Bo Burnham, which really explains a few things and is going to need some context before I can answer. For those who are not familiar with the name Bo Burnham, 30-second background synopsis on him, he started out doing music and comedy when he was quite young, like child-aged young, and went viral in the days where going viral was something that was unusual and life-changing. And ever since then, he's kind of been viewed as this astoundingly talented and witty performer. As he got older, his work started taking a dark turn until it kind of resolved into what it is today. And if I had to describe it, I would say it's this kind of brutally honest nihilism with just enough comedy thrown on top to muddy the waters that people think he's doing a bit instead of telling it like he sees it. In reality, he is just stating things as he sees them and laughing. And his whole bit seems to be this fake but also real confusion as to why people want to give him large amounts of money for pointing out that the world is messed up. His view on fame and success is quite pessimistic in the sense that he views them as more a factor of random chance than any individual level of skill or effort, and he's correct in that assessment. But most of his work reads to me like the result of a very optimistic and naive young man who was violently and abruptly indoctrinated into the apathy, cynicism, and learned sociopathy that operates the behind the scenes of a modern internet society, and probably updated his priors a little bit too hard in the opposite direction. This kind of resulted in someone who is incredibly talented and funny and intelligent, but also scathingly sarcastic, and perhaps a bit too pessimistic for his own good or mental well-being. To that end, and answering with that in mind, what do I think of my viewers and their time? Well, I'm not Bo Burnham, but my view is a little bit odd. And that is that I think my viewers are people. People have interests, and when they have free time and those interests align with the kinds of content that I put out, they are more likely to become viewers. Sometimes viewers like what I'm doing enough to want to support me financially or ask me questions or do all sorts of other things that people do when someone is interested in something someone else is doing. Sometimes people stop having free time, or their interests change and they no longer align with the content that I'm putting out and they stop being viewers. All of those are fine and are perfectly normal, but I don't consider myself exceptionally special for being the recipient of them. As for viewers' time, as stated, my viewers are people, and I will interact with them the same way that I do as everyone else who is a person. And those interactions, because I am me, come with a desire to respect their time and individual agency, because during my childhood I was taught that respecting that is important. And it's really that simple. I don't necessarily view you as friends or comrades because I don't really know any of you personally. I certainly don't hate or despise you. I don't want to manipulate you. Do I consider this channel to be famous? I have no idea. Fame is a name that we give the top performers in the social status game that you win by being known about by lots of people, but there really isn't a concrete threshold to determine when you're winning and when you're losing. Like, am I in the top percent of people? Am I in the top 10%? No, probably not. But by that same metric, I'm also not in the bottom 10% either, so by that measure, I'm at least a little bit famous compared to others, but I don't consider that exceptionally special. Do I deserve the time people put into watching me? I don't think that's really a question I can answer, because this whole idea of entitlement and deserving and being owed stuff is mostly just fake hallucinations made up by our monkey brains. So it's kind of a cop-out, but the best answer I can give is that I do YouTube because I enjoy it, not because I expect to be fairly compensated or because I think I deserve something out of it. Would I make a career out of it if my channel was financially stable? Sure, absolutely, but that's because I like doing YouTube more than I like doing my day job. I am not somehow operating under the delusion that because I put all this work into it, I deserve success, or I deserve to have this great big old American dream story. There are a lot of people who work really hard, and most of them are not successful, and that's just the way the world works. So I know this, and I work hard because I want to, not because I feel like it entitles me to anything. Turning back to lighter topics in RLCraft, it turns out that Run 6 was the lucky one, and after a solid 90 minutes in the Lost Cities, I became the proud owner of a dragon ring. This ring, in addition to being something of a prestige symbol on certain multiplayer servers, grants a 25% increase to my max HP and attack damage, a 50% increase to my armor toughness, debuffs my swim speed by 25%, which is really kind of a good thing, and grants fire resistance and toggleable night vision, and also allows me to consume a usually useless passive resource called mana to gain creative mode flight temporarily. This makes it pretty much the only race ring that is not just objectively bad for my build, and also lets me replace my Dragon Eye with something else. Just having the ring isn't enough, though. My current ring slots give me resistance buffs, which are super necessary given that the final boss fight is in the Lost Cities, and I would much prefer to sustain the dragon transformation without taking up a bauble slot. Which is a thing. It just requires you to eat the ring and consume a substantial amount of radioactive glowing yellow ingots in the process. I am just barely able to scrape up enough to do what I need to make the transformation permanent, and now I can replace my redundant Dragon Eye with a teddy bear for that little bit of anti-Lycanite protection in the last boss fight of the game. So, Amalgalich time. It's a big scary red thing, because there clearly wasn't enough of those in this run. Sports a whopping 20,000 HP, has a deeply inappropriate attraction to Shadowfire, will instantly kill you if it touches you, and spends 90% of its time smashing the activate button on its built-in vacuum cleaner. By Lycanite standards, this is a shockingly harmless and balanced fight, and given that the thing is entirely stationary and has no other ranged attack worth a darn, on its own it is something of a pushover. The real problem is that the arena it creates has blocks that parasite mobs can spawn on, and being forced to run around to dodge Sucky the Skullface means I constantly have to be aggroing what is the rough equivalent of a mob farm made entirely out of eldritch death juice given corporeal form, which tends to really rack up the life insurance claims. The real problem here is the running around part. The Amalgalich fight is designed to punish you for being stationary by sucking you in and turning you into sushi, and parasite spawn mechanics unintentionally punish your mobility by vaporizing your internal organs through spam. I look at this and see an opportunity for creative problem solving. Parasite mobs, once you get past the whole "what do you mean this thing has 300 health, 200 armor points, it moves at Mach 3 thing, are fundamentally just like any other mob in Minecraft, and spawn according to rules. The most relevant of those rules right now is that they mostly respect something called a mob cap, which prevents the world from endlessly spawning things until your game crashes. This means that if I create my arena somewhere that already has a lot of parasite mobs spawned in already, that mob cap is going to be pretty close to full, which should damp down the passive spawn rates in the arena. If I wanted to get super technical, I could make something called a peaceful switch, which is a structure that entirely disables hostile mobs' natural spawning mechanics, but that involves effort, and the damping effect should be plenty strong enough if I wait around in a specific area a bit before summoning the arena, and I'm lazy so I don't feel like doing it. Skullface's sucky mechanic has about a bazillion ways of being dealt with, but it turns out that you can just invalidate the entire fight by doing some homebrew Fortnite and optionally taking a leak on the arena floor. You see, the problem with just about any combat mechanic in Minecraft is that they're hard countered by hiding behind a wall and shooting arrows through a teeny hole from really far away. The designer of this fight realized this, did some due diligence, and implemented a mechanic that prevents you from placing or breaking things in the arena while the fight is active. They also made sure that the arena didn't have any cheesable terrain that players could use, which mostly gets rid of this in a normal fight. Unfortunately for them, they didn't do enough due diligence and overlooked the fact that the anti-manipulation mechanic only takes effect once the boss spawns in, which gives me more than enough time to carve a bunker into the wall of the arena and splash some water down in front to keep the trash mobs at bay in case they get uppity. After that setup, it's basically over for the poor Amalgalich. I made a stupid amount of TNT arrows. These are objectively worse than using regular diamond-tipped arrows, but they make funny noises, so I don't care, and with multi-shot and strafe on my bow, they also multi-class as an excellent area denial option. Hiding like a coward also has the effect of basically breaking the entire fight. The Amalgalich is stationary, and it has a very limited number of moves at its disposal. Of its ranged attacks, one sucks you towards the boss and is hard countered by Fortnite. One summons projectiles over your head and is also hard countered by Fortnite. One summons mobs to attack you, which is also hard countered by Fortnite, but wouldn't do anything anyway because I am the literal avatar of suppressing fire, and anything that exists within 10 blocks of me tends to get blown to pieces before I even see it. Other than that, the boss can try to heal?
Are you serious?
But that's really about it. Oh, I forgot, it can also glitch out, because of course it can. Lycanite mobs have a recurring bug where they sometimes duplicate themselves when you kill them. Today I learned it applies to the Amalgalich. Conveniently, I only used maybe a quarter of my TNT arrows, so dealing with Hotbody's twitching clone isn't really any more of a problem than Hotbody itself was. Fun fact, after rewatching the footage for this fight, several interesting factoids stood out. The first is that the biggest damage dealers from Team RLCraft are, in order, friendly fire chip damage from me blowing myself up with my own arrows, the automatic swap to offhand arrows reducing my maximum HP, and hypothermia. As near as I can tell, I sustained exactly 0 damage as a result of any Amalgalich attack or parasite mob attack during the entire fight. I was my own worst enemy. The second fun factoid is that the Amalgalich's hitbox is absolutely whack. Even after killing several of these things over my various playthroughs, I have 0 idea where its hitbox lives. I thought it was in the legs, and this is clearly not the case. The third thing is that not only is the amulet it drops just objectively worse than a strength potion, it takes up the same slot as my Stone of the Sea, which is something that has actual utility and use, so unless you're min-maxing a damage build or looking for a completionist run, killing this thing is a massive waste of time. So, there you have it. RLCraft beaten without dying once, in that specific run, at least. Before I let the credits roll, some Goose-flavored shower thought retrospectives for you. First and foremost, I don't think RLCraft is really all that hard. I don't even think it's really poorly balanced. The problem is that it has Lycanites, and even though I do enjoy Lycanites and think it's utterly critical to the flavor of this mod pack, Lycanites has some serious playability issues that are magnified because of how this pack is put together. Second, RLCraft is fun to play, but it's not as fun in hardcore mode. The various different kinds of infernal and boss mobs and Lycanite mobs introduce just too much randomness for everything you do in the early game, and a huge amount of your progression relies on you using these suboptimal strategies to avoid those bad mob interactions. Third, as much as I like doing Minecraft, I need and would like to maintain a little bit more flexibility in what I do on the channel, just to keep myself from getting pigeonholed by the algorithm. Those of you who are members, which is a thing now, by the way, if you're interested, are going to be soon or have already been read into what my plans are for this a little bit more, but I'm fairly confident that what's coming down the pipe should be something fun for everyone to watch. Finally, you have not seen the last of Goose RLCraft, because I have ideas. Some of them are for sure things that I want to do in the future, some of them require a bit more research and testing on my part, but I am far from done with this mod pack. All that said, I'm going to let the credits roll and give a massive thank you to Ducky for letting me steal her music. As always, thank you for your time, for your attention, and for your support. Apologies to everyone who asked questions that I didn't have time to answer, but I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all enjoyed the series.